businesses or to relocate permanently to Malta?
It's really hard for me to believe that going to Malta requires any encouragement. The weather in Poland today is just disastrous, almost like a horror. Anyways, if you could tell us all but few words what Dixcart is actually doing and what kind of help could be potentially needed while entering Malta as a business.
Perfect. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for everyone else tuning in. Just to complicate matters, the accent you're hearing is South African, but I'm currently in Dubai, but I'm technically based in Malta.
All right.
So Dixcart is a family-owned group of companies. We're in 9 countries around the world. And so in Malta, we're licensed by the Malta Financial Services Authority. So we can set up companies, we can manage the companies, we can do any licensing application, any patent registrations. And then we also have a license to market all the citizenship and residency routes into Malta. And we are licensed to provide trustee and fiduciary services for Maltese companies. So, Michael, to answer your question, to set up a Maltese company, it's very straightforward. So basically, you need to put in 250 euros of share capital, and we can do everything remotely. So, you can send us your documents. We will verify you. Our compliance team will onboard you. Once we're happy with all the information, we can set up the company. There's no need for you to come to Malta. So it's quite straightforward. Even getting a bank account, you don't need to visit Malta. So basically, everything will happen remotely. Once the company is open, we would need to receive all the documents you submitted in hard copy, but that could be sent with a courier. So it's quite a business-friendly jurisdiction to start operations.
Okay, thank you very much for this. It sounds like an extremely friendly environment for almost every sort of businesses that can be run remotely. Yeah, because it's very, very hard to say in modern economy that the business is allocated or associated in just one place. Yeah, even if this is something, let's say, more traditional, obviously there are so many opportunities to export or to provide services, consultancies remotely. So I can imagine that establishing headquarters in Malta may be very, very attractive option. My question would be, since I am a little bit from the IT vertical, what are the specifics of the IT market in Malta? Is it more dominated, let's say, by startups looking for venture capital, or let's say digital agencies? How does it look like from your perspective?
Well, in Malta, actually, it's such a broad range. You can start with gaming companies, the affiliates that work with gaming companies, to software developers. There's, even if you look at new technologies like AI, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, Internet of Things, anything that you can do manufacturing, we add high value to any, but so high value manufacturing is very popular in Malta. The agency in charge of promoting that is called Malta Enterprise. And Malta Enterprise there's so many funding opportunities. There's startup capital, there's cashback on capital expenditure, there's soft loans. So especially if you're going into the IT sector, there's a lot of funding that's available for startups. So Malta is the perfect startup hub. And then once you've got a Maltese company, we can help you. So like you said, work remotely and have your headquarters in Malta. That is very possible. One thing to consider when you do this is that a company is tax resident where the decisions are being taken. So what we provide as Dixcart is we offer, so I'll sit on your board, or one of our other directors will sit on your board on your company. I'm resident in Malta. There's other resident directors. So when you look at the structure, you have local Maltese resident directors. So the decisions that the directors are making are being made in Malta, which means the management and control sits in Malta. So the company is tax resident in Malta. If, for instance, you live in Portugal and you're the only director and you don't leave Portugal, then the company is being managed from Portugal. Even though it's a Maltese company, it will become tax resident in Portugal, for instance. So it's just something to consider.
Especially for countries directions with, let's say, lesser attractive tax system, yeah, which is kind of characteristics locally, just like the ugly weather. Uh, Prior to our call, we had an opportunity to discuss once or twice, let's say, forms of investment that the startup established in Malta may expect. You have outlined several options here. If you could put a little bit of light on them, that would be very helpful.
Sure. So and like I said, when you come to us, we will set up your company, and we will help you with the funding process, the application process, any licensing that you need to do. If you have intellectual property that you'd like to register in Malta, half of our offers are accountants. So I'm an accountant, South African chartered accountant, but a large part of our staff in Malta are licensed and qualified lawyers. So we can help you with any legal matters in Malta. Now, how the funding work in Malta is that you need to make sure that you select the right option. So it's not that you can go from a menu and say I want A, B, C, and D. You need to see which one works the best and will give you the most funding, because once you've applied for the funding, it sort of excludes you from for applying for other funding. And that's why we come into play, because we will sit with you and work through your business plan, work on your business plan with you, and then go speak with the agency to see which ones would work best for you. There's startup funding in that if you're quite capital intensive and you have to, you're going to manufacturing, there you can get up to 40% cash back of your capital expenditure. And it depends on when you apply. So if you apply and you wait for the grant to be given to you, then it's cash back. If you don't have time and you have to start, you can start, but then the grant will be in the form of tax credits. So again, you need to make sure that you consult a local professional before you start operations. So there's startup funding. There is research and development funding. So if you want to develop new software and you want to design it, but it has to be a new startup, and it has to be some new software. So you can't have been working on it for a while. Okay, so there's some rules around that. So then you have the startup funding, the research and development. There's even if you want to do a feasibility study. So if you think that it may or may not work, there's also money available for that. So Malta Enterprise have some money that's set aside that you can apply for funding, see if you're going to get it to do the groundwork, and then you can start. The good thing with Malta Enterprise is that you don't need to set up a Maltese company, go through all the hassles, all the costs to set up a company, and then find out that you can't get funding and it doesn't work. So we will onboard you. So you'll have to pay our fees, because as a corporate service provider and being licensed in Malta, we would need to make sure that you're a good person and there isn't any reason why we shouldn't be dealing with you. Now, once we've onboarded you and our compliance team are happy with you, then we can go to Malta Enterprise. They are happy to offer funding and start the process to go through the funding approval process, even though the company is not registered. Obviously, then once the company is registered, the funding is approved, then you can go ahead and register the company with the Malta Business Registry. But it is nice in the sense that you don't have to spend all that money to have a company and then you can't get the funding, so then you have to liquidate the company and incur further costs. For instance, so there's one of the things I wanted to mention is that if you are a normal company, you can get up to 200,000 euros in a government grant. But if you're in technology, innovation, any of the new technologies or high value manufacturing, then you can get up to 800,000. So it's quite a substantial amount for a startup. And then lastly, there's more, but the ones that I think might be interesting to this audience is also business development. So you get, I can't remember the amount exactly now, but you do get an amount from the Maltese government to go out and market your product and do business development to get the product off the shelves, off the ground. So, this is just a high level to show you that there is lots of funding. Malta as a government really wants to push the technology field. The regulators have an open door. I was actually at the expo here in Dubai, and I had a brief meeting with Malta Enterprise, and we landed up spending half an hour just talking about the business and the opportunities that's out there. So the agency is very business friendly and very open to chat.
Well, sounds very promising and sounds extremely helpful. I believe that you had a chance to at least shadow several, let's say, funding processes performed by startups for startups. What are the good practices, or what are, let's say, the most important assets at the hand of a startup founder in order to receive this funding? Yeah, my clientele, they may come up just with an idea, but some of them, for example, they do not have much assets, but they perform very in-depth research on their, for example, on their final market, on their potential users, and so on. They have a strong proof that they, for example, recognize the need, because lack of need is usually the most often reason why startups fail. How does it look like from your perspective?
So Malta Enterprise is quite, like I said, progressive in that they look at the business plan. So because it's a grant, there's no security needed. So it's not that you have to say that I'll put in 10,000, you put in 10,000. They look at the grant, they look at the business plan. So that's why you would need a professional like ourselves to help you with the business plan, to make sure that you cover all the points that the agency would look at. But also, what's nice with the agency is that they're open and there's a flow of information. So, if they're not happy with something or they have a question, they'll come back and say, okay, but guys, you said this, but what have you thought about this? And so, then if you can go back and prove that you have thought it through, the agency is happy to move forward. So it's not like you go there with your business plan in a sealed envelope, and whatever you put in there is whatever you put in there. And if you missed something, you lose the grant. They're happy to guide you and even us when we do the process with you, to show you what needs to happen in order to access the funding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this. By taking this chance, I would like to encourage our audience, ladies and gentlemen, you may ask your questions using our comment section. Yes, this broadcast is taking place as a LinkedIn post, so you can basically use the comment section to ask questions. Yes, from your perspective, extremely subjective one, I would say, what are, let's say, the trends in, let's say, the startup world or the technologies world from the Maltese perspective? Yeah, what are the most often inquiries? Are there, let's say, related to financial services? Are there, let's say, more related to entertainment? How does it look like from your perspective?
Again, Malta, because it's so business friendly and because it offers so many benefits, some of the benefits include, if you're a non-European, for instance, if we have viewers from outside of the EU, if a Maltese company pays a dividend to a non-European entity, there's no withholding tax. So, there's clients that would want to invest into Europe, and they're doing it through a Maltese company to save the withholding tax that some other jurisdictions may levy. We have companies that invest heavily into Portugal, into real estate. But then again, the same goes for technology, because Malta is known as the gaming hub. So I live in Slema, and every other door when I walk to the office in the mornings have a gaming company or a gaming related company there. So when you meet a local Maltese on the street and they hear you're a foreigner, they always ask, what gaming company do you work for? So there's a lot of gaming companies that, and it could be like, gaming specific. So, the slots and all of that, but also affiliate companies that support the industry, so that either direct traffic to a specific website. Then there's guys that are developing software. There's actually an innovation hub in close to Valletta, which is like a Regis, those Regis offices. We have small little offices and then meeting spaces, and that's already fully booked out. And it's a massive facility that the government put aside for IT startups to move to the island, and it was oversubscribed as soon as they opened it up. So again, there's so many different fields. I can't say to you like it's only software or it's only hardware. But like I said, that as an island or as a jurisdiction, again, when I was here at Expo 2020 in Dubai, the agency said to me they're really pushing new technologies, so AI, Internet of Things, and the like.
Thank you very much for this. At the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned very important matter. I mean, the matter of intellectual property. Does your company support, let's say, matters of protecting the intellectual property, and how does it look like, let's say, in practice? Do you, for example, have your attorneys? What kind of support can you provide?
Exactly. So, we will set up the company for you, we'll manage it. And then once you start developing the specific IP that you would like to register or that you would like to trademark, we would then start the process with our in-house legal team to make sure that the wording is correct. It's recorded with the correct agency within Malta, and then it gets further recorded to the larger database within the union. So it's a whole process, and that's why some clients have initially said to us they feel like they can do it themselves. It looks very straightforward, and it appears to be very straightforward. But if you do it every day, then it is. And because some of these IPs do eventually land up with quite significant value, you need to make sure that it's properly set up so that you don't come at you've designed this beautiful like IT, like software, for instance, and it's amazing, and you're going to make millions from it, and then all of a sudden someone starts copying you from the East or whatever, and you try and enforce your patent, and you miss the step, or it's too broad that they can't actually apply. Your description is too broad, so you can't actually go to the courts and get a ruling on it.
Okay, so this is the part of kind of support that I could also expect from you.
Correct. Yes. So we have warranted lawyers that deal with all of that.
Okay.
You're asking an accountant a lawyer question, but yes, I know we have very qualified people to do that, but it's definitely not me.
Oh, right. No, well, I think that it is a very broad topic because on one hand, I have a chance, for example, to work with startup founders, which always find their idea unique, and sometimes I'm receiving the same unique idea coming just from two different countries, yes, on the same day. So you can imagine how does it look like. While on the other hand, there are, let's say, very complex concepts in terms of IT security, architecture, and so on. So I can imagine that those founders could benefit very, very heavily from the services that you provide. It seems like what are you helping with is also, let's say, avoiding dealing with, let's say, governments or jurisdictions which are basically unattractive or unfriendly towards the, let's say, modern economy or new technologies or so on. Yes, countries where basically law and regulation is too obsolete to basically secure and serve modern companies. Do you have, let's say, like a directions that are, I don't know how to say it, popular, yeah, like countries from which you notice that the people are, let's say, running away more and more often? How does it look like? Or if this is something super, that you would like to remain in discretion?
I wouldn't say run away from, but what I would say is that Malta is quite progressive in that the ministry, the officials they have an open door policy. So if you had to come to them and say we want to do this, and can you look at legislation because there's nothing around it, what would normally take, I presume, in other countries years, you could probably do in Malta in a year, for instance, because the ministry and the agencies involved are very business friendly and they move very quickly. So Malta is very small. As an island, it's I think 350 square kilometers big. So when you look at that, you're like, it's a bit small. But what's good with that is that everyone is very well connected, and so the agencies work well together, the service providers work well with the government. So if you look at there's the blockchain, so Malta regulated blockchain, as one of the first countries in the world to do that. So you can set up a blockchain or launch a coin via Malta, and it's regulated. So if you wanted to go to institutional investors and say, here's my blockchain, or here's my fintech company, and it's in a regulated space, that could definitely elevate your product. So there's fintech, and again, AI, Internet of Things, all of that stuff. So they're really looking at how to regulate it to make sure that it's properly regulated, but it's progressive. So like you said, some countries may take very long to adapt to this new way of thinking, whereas Malta is very quick to say, like, okay, how do we do this? How to make sure that there's no money laundering, or there's no hiding funds or anything like that. But as we can do things the right way and do it very quickly.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Just to make it clear, I wasn't suggesting any sort of the things that you mentioned in the last sentence. No, I'm just, I'm just aware. I even wrote a blog post a long time ago that the countries and jurisdictions are becoming like service providers, actually, and they will be competing for more and more attractive companies. And obviously, Malta is becoming one of the leaders in that field. Yeah. Toward comparing to some, let's say, obsolete jurisdictions which are unable to handle the modern world. Anyways,
and I mean, there's because of the technology companies in Malta, so gaming, all of that. There are so many techies on the island, so the talent pool is very big. You mentioned it earlier about the weather. We've got 300 days of sunshine in Malta, so we don't struggle with vitamin D deficiencies. So when you set up your company in Malta, it's easy to find staff. It's even easier to convince staff to move to Malta. If you're in a technology space, you can, and you pay a certain salary for your staff. It's also easy to get work permits. So if you're recruiting from outside of the EU, if you have a certain salary level, the application gets fast tracked. So getting qualified people onto the island and getting your company off the ground is very easy.
Okay. Thank you very much for this. By taking this chance once again, I would like to encourage our audience, our viewers, to ask questions using the comment section. We both are glad to answer them. Coming back to you, Henno, perhaps this is a little bit beyond the field of interest, but I think you have a chance to, let's say, behold these processes. I mean, as you mentioned, Malta is an attractive environment, but as a country is relatively small in terms of territory and population. Because of, let's say, economic, geographic, and historic conditions, it has a strong bond, for example, with the United Kingdom, also a strong bond with the entire region of the Mediterranean, so to speak. Is it a good place to, for example, begin the expansion? For example, if I would coming up with something like Revolut, so a product which is obviously demands for international clientele, do you think it's a good place to start, let's say, that sort of expansion?
For sure. I mean, so we've dealt with the funding, but if you just look at the running cost of a Maltese company versus some other countries that are quite prominent for startups, the running costs are much lower in Malta. You've got the funding available. One thing we haven't touched on, and let me maybe just explain to the viewers how the tax system works in Malta. So all Maltese companies pay tax at 35%. So initially you'll be like, whoa, it's much cheaper elsewhere. But what happens is that if you're a foreign shareholder and it's trading income that you're getting, then the government will give back to you as a foreign shareholder 30%. So essentially, if you make €100 profit in your IT company, and 35 euros will go to the government, 65 euros will go to you as the shareholder. If it's trading profit, that €100, then 65 euros, 30 euros goes to you as a shareholder from the government. So at the end of the day, you'll have 65 euros from the company and 30 euros from the government. So you'll sit with 95 euros. So it's very attractive to have a Maltese company. There's the funding, the ease of doing business, with the regulator and all of that. And on top of that, just to top it all off, you've got, the really beneficial tax rate. Malta's got, if I'm not mistaken, close to 70 double taxation treaties with countries around the world. So if you have a Maltese company, and you're in a jurisdiction, there would possibly be a double taxation treaty. If you, for instance, have a Maltese company and you have a subsidiary that pays a dividend to the Maltese company, the dividends there's some rules around it, but predominantly, if you own more than 5% of the underlying company, so it's not a lot, the dividends that you receive in Malta is not taxed. Now, if you imagine that you're a non-European that owns that Maltese company, the dividends that flow from Malta to, let's say, South Africa, where I'm from, is not taxed. There's no withholding tax on that. So it's a brilliant structure, even if you just want to look at a holding company and consolidate your worldwide operations. It's a very good jurisdiction for that. So tax efficient, double taxation treaties. And even if there's a country that we have no double taxation treaty with, any taxes that you've suffered in the home country that's paying you the dividend, that you get as a deduction in Malta as unilateral tax relief. So from a tax perspective, Malta wins hands down. And then, getting staff in and just the ease of doing business makes it an easy decision. One thing I should also maybe mention here, while also talking about the lifestyle and that, it's also very easy to get to Malta. So all the airlines fly to Malta: Turkish Airlines, Emirates, British Airways, EasyJet, Ryanair, Wizz Air. And then Malta has its own airline called Air Malta that fly direct all over the world. I think they fly to 60 destinations. So getting on and off the island is very easy. If there's no need for you to visit Malta to set up your company, but if you wanted to come to Malta to set up a company, it's very easy to get there. And even for the staff that are there, if they have to commute to visit clients, it's quite easy to get on and off the island.
Well, I should start looking for my backpack. At least for November, December, that would be convenient. Okay, then. Perhaps I think the final one for now, since just to let me check, we do not have any actual questions in the comments. In that case, I would like to at least encourage our audience to address the questions following this session, because it will be available later on after the broadcast. What would be your advice to a startup founder arriving Malta with a backpack like me and a great idea of, for example, financial product that could conquer the world, let's say, conquer the world in terms of payments or, for example, loans?
I think the biggest thing I would say is get professional advice. I know as a startup, every cent counts, and you count your euros and all of that, but penny wise, pound foolish. So try and get professional advice as soon as you can, or you can afford it, so that you don't go down a path and then you realize you made a mistake. So for instance, with Malta Enterprise, a lot of the funding relates to startups. So once a company reaches a certain age, you can no longer apply for funding. So that's something to consider. If you have a great idea that's going to take over the world, make sure that you get it patented correctly, quickly, and so that it's registered on all the websites and parts that it needs to be recorded, so that if you are, if someone copies you, you can at least have something to fall back on. And then, like I said, setting up in Malta, you can set up a company. We have serviced office space. So if you want to have someone in Malta, so you have a software engineer that you want to physically put in Malta to work on your software, for instance, we have serviced office space, so you can get him a desk. He'll be based in our building. Your company name will be outside our building. So if anybody comes to visit, your company name's there. There's a receptionist. There's a meeting room. Your developer is physically in Malta. So the cost is much lower, because if you had to arrive in Malta, now you have to find an office that's big enough, that if you have guests over, that you can have a meeting with them and looks professional. It's a lot of investment, capital outlays for young startups. So at least with us, you've got serviced offices with receptionists and all of that. And also what we do with the serviced office clients is that we have like get-togethers and barbecues, because we've got a beautiful terrace overlooking the marina with all the super yachts, and we have barbecues in autumn and in spring on the terrace, and we always invite the service office clients with, because a lot of them will only have one person on the island, so that's quite lonely. So they integrate very well within the Dixcart house team. So it's sort of like a little family for your staff. When you, at least, in theory, they should be happy to remain and work in your startup. But yeah, so I think the biggest thing I think that everyone always tries to cut corners on is seeking professional advice. Also in your home country. So for instance, if you're based in the UK, make sure that you get proper advice in the UK. There's also no point in you undertaking this whole complex structure, for instance, in setting up a Maltese company with a holding company, with a subsidiary in Johannesburg or whatever, and it doesn't work because you're living in the UK and all of that. So professional advice, I think, would be the one thing I would want to leave with everyone watching.
Well, I must admit that when you mentioned the matter of the terrace, it sounds like also a networking opportunity. And for example, in the world of my clientele, it is extremely important. So it's good to know that, let's say, some such opportunity takes place. What can I say?
And like I mentioned, there's that innovation hub in Valletta. So, there's a lot of, actually this week, there's Malta Enterprise has a startup week festival where they have a lot of events happening to help startups and help startups network within the island. So you're right, like for startups initially, you do need to network. And especially in the technology field, that so much is happening so quickly. So even if you don't want to be in the Dixcart house, you can go to the innovation hub. Because what tends to happen is people start in the innovation hub and then they grow, and then they move out to premises close by. So it's even though the innovation hub is full at the moment, there is churn, and so there will be space available maybe later on. So it's easy to collaborate, and again, because the island is very small, it's very easy to collaborate and set up meetings and meet fellow tech companies on the island.
Well, thank you very much for this. I think it sounds like a good encouragement for the startups all around Europe and beyond. Thank you very much for finding time for us. As mentioned,
I see we have one comment though.
Yeah,
is it difficult to actually work in Malta? Sun, sea, barbecue, and networking. In summer, it's difficult because in summer you've got the beach clubs that are open, and the beach clubs are amazing. So in summer, but these days, I mean, I'm in a hotel room currently, so you can work from anywhere. So nothing stops you from taking your laptop to Cafe Del Mar and sitting next to the pool, working with amazing Mediterranean weather.
Well, amazing. I've been talking with one of our designers today, and he just said that he loves this rainy, let's say, English sort of weather because it's easier for him to focus. But different professionals have different preferences. Okay, then. Thank you very much, Henno, for finding time for us, for finding time for our audience. I would like to pretty much encourage everyone which is considering establishing a startup, looking for a good jurisdiction, to consider Henno Kotze and his services provided by Dixcart Malta. Please feel free to reach out to him using LinkedIn and other, let's say, contact channels. If on the other way you would like to build something with your startup, of course, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be very, very grateful for any message coming from you. I'm not sure what next time Merrick Studio will be broadcasting live on LinkedIn, but I'm sure you will be keep posted. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Looking forward to weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.